Hello everyone. In this short video I'm going to give some details about the calculation of the bending persistence length for a non-local twistable worm-like chain, introduced in a paper of our group about DNA elasticity. The reference is given here. The calculations I'm going to describe now are in Appendix C of that paper. The worm-like chain is a standard model for semi-flexible polymers and DNA. In the discrete worm-like chain, the energy is given by a sum of scalar products of neighboring consecutive tangent vectors, as shown here. The tangent-tangent correlation function decays exponentially. This decay is governed by a characteristic length, called the persistence length. Our aim is to calculate the bending persistence length in a model with non-local interactions, coupling distant tangent vectors un and un plus m. We also want to include twist and bending anisotropies. In a DMA model with twist, a configuration is described not by a single tangent vectors, but by local orthonormal triads of unit vectors un, fn, vn, which we also indicate as tn. un is as before the local tangent, while fn and vn are oriented as shown in the top view of the DNA molecule here. The DNA molecule has a major and a minor groove. The unit vector fn cuts the grooves symmetrically, while vn is aligned along the base pairing. A given conformation of the molecule is described by a set of rotations. Given the triad Tn at base pair n, the rotation maps it into the triad Tn plus 1 at base pair n plus 1. There are several different ways to parameterize a rotation. Here we use a rotation axis, indicated by a vector theta. The length of this vector is the rotation angle in radians. A small length of theta means a small rotation angle. The vector theta can be written in components along the local triad. This defines the quantities tilt, roll, and twist. Tilt and roll describe bending deformation. The twist has an intrinsic part, omega naught, and an excess part, capital omega. Note that here the parameter A is the distance between the consecutive base pairs, considered to be fixed. A equal to 0.34 nanometers. The rotation from a triad to the next can also be represented as a 3x3 matrix. As function of the rotation parameters tilt, roll, and twist, the rotation matrix takes the form shown here. Here we use TRW to indicate the tilt, roll, and twist divided by the length of the vector theta. TRW are the three components of a unit vector. The sum of their squares is equal to 1. Having introduced the basics, we can now proceed with the calculation. We want to calculate the tangent-tangent correlator between two distant points, u0.um. The um is equal to the product of the rotation matrix Rm-1 times um-1. And we can iterate this expression for successive um-2, m-3, and so on. We end up with the following expression. The tangent-tangent correlator is the element 3,3 of the product of m rotation matrices. The difficulty in this calculation is that the sides are coupled, so product does not factorize. We present now two different approximation schemes. The first of the two is easier, but also less accurate. It assumes that rotations are infinitesimal. Formally, this corresponds to letting the distance between base pairs goes to 0. In practice, typical rotation angles are around 34 degrees. This is the intrinsic twist angle. Approximate the sine and cosine of such angles to their lowest order Taylor expansion produces an error of about 10%. This is the form of a rotation matrix for an infinitesimal rotation. We take the product of two such matrices and keep the lowest order terms in A. Here we show the element 1, 3. To lowest order in A, this is given by minus A times the sum of the rolls. The same for the element 2, 3, which is given by A times the sum of the tilts. For the element 3, 3, one can collect some terms and show that to lowest order in A, tilt and roll are summed. The calculation of the tangent-tangent correlation proceeds in this way, and we get this final expression from which we can get the bending persistence length. In the limit of a local model, the terms at different sides are independent and the cross average vanish. The sums are just m times one element, and we get a well-known relation for the bending persistence length for a local model. In the non-local case, an m dependence remains, and the bending persistence length becomes length dependent. In the limit of capital N, the number of sides going to infinity, the discrete sum can be replaced with an integral in Fourier space of the following form. Tau tilde and rho tilde are the Fourier transforms of the tilt and of the roll. Y is a rescaled momentum. Now we discuss the second approximation, which we call intrinsic twist dominance. We write a rotation matrix as a product of a pure twist times a matrix R hat. The pure twist matrix is shown here. The matrix R hat can be treated as infinitesimal. The rest of the calculation is technically more challenging. For details, see our paper. The final expression resembles that of the previous approximation with one difference. In Fourier space, the momentum is shifted by an amount delta q, which is the momentum associated to the intrinsic twist. This is the effect of the matrix S. Two comments here. A, the torsional persistence length has a similar expression. B, from a generic form given here, one can easily derive the following asymptotic expansion at large M. The first fraction captures all terms algebraic in M, while the last term is exponentially small in M. This holds both for torsional and bending persistence lengths. So we have derived two expressions for the bending persistence length using two different approximations. We can test them against simulation. For DNA, the two expressions are very close to each other for reasons explained in our paper. See also video linked here. We test this approximation on a generic non-local model specified here using interaction which do not necessarily match those of a DNA molecule. The energy of a non-local twistable Wormlike chain is given here and contains local couplings as tau n squared and rho n squared terms. There are also non-local terms as tau n times tau n plus 1, coupling tilt at two different sides. Other terms coupling twist and twist roll, etc., are not explicitly shown here. We leave them in the dots. The stiffnesses are indicated with letters A, C, G, B. See paper. A superscript T is the tilt stiffness, and the index 0 denotes a local coupling. And indices 1, 2, and so on denote couplings between distal sides. We have simulated two sets of model with couplings given in the table shown here. The non-local terms are limited to couplings between side n and n plus 2. The bending persistence length is calculated using Monte Carlo simulations, and it is indeed length dependent. The numerical Monte Carlo data are shown as black dashed lines and fit very well the intrinsic twist dominance approximation shown in green. The infinitesimal rotation approximation deviates from Monte Carlo data of about 10%. The two cases show two opposite behaviors. In simulation 1, the persistence length is smaller at short length scales and increases with the base pair distance. This is what happens in DNA, which is softer at short scales. In simulation 2, the opposite happens. Note that in simulation 2, we use negative offside couplings. As a concluding note, although our main interest is DNA, what we have discussed here applies to any semi-flexible polymer with non-local interactions. It would be nice to analyze more examples.